So welcome to District 4, to the point for information and news. I'm your host, A-Love. So there's a lot going on. We're going to talk about some of the latest news. This is going to include some celebrity stories that I overheard. And everyone was kind of like asking me questions. They're thinking, do you not see what's going on? Do you not have an opinion on some of this stuff? Why aren't you putting videos out daily about this stuff? And it makes sense, and it's a fair question to ask, but it's probably for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons is because to synopsisize all of this and to sort of put it in perspective, you have to go back to some of my older videos. Now, you see me talking about AI. And I was real big on that. I started reading about it immediately. I am a little bit of a tech nerd, so I wanted to see where this was going. This sort of hits heads with the downfall of celebrity. So those of you that haven't noticed, people get late to the program. There's a lot of cancellations of a celebrity as a whole, as Hollywood as a whole begins to lose its grip on its audience. And you go in with that, and we talk about also what's going on with we have a sort of celebrity president, right? He was on The Apprentice. I still love that show. I still watch it. And he sort of represents what's happening today, which is why he's in office, right? People tend to pick for that reason. We talk about the death of the Pope that just recently happened as of the taping of this video. And we see how this sort of intersects with the goals of the government. So you're like, what? And where does all this go? And where are you taking me with this information? So let's start by just telling a few stories that have ever happened. One of the stories that I heard was talking about Sean Kingston. Now, some of you don't remember who that is, and some of you are like, oh, the beautiful girl guy. He had a couple of hits. And also heard a story about Katy Perry. It crosses sort of with religion because it's talking about this house she wants and these nuns. So you're like, well, how are you putting all this together? Well, let me just start with the stories first. So I was watching, I scroll, I watch, I pay attention just like anybody else, although I don't always report on it. And I'm listening to this story about Sean Kingston, which was abruptly followed from the same person by this Katy Perry story. And I was fascinated because I generally don't watch this kind of news media necessarily. But I was watching this because the story wasn't so much about them being celebrities as much as it was about what they were doing. Long story short, Sean Kingston and his mother. Now this plays into the lack of parenting we have nowadays and the sort of later generation of Z and even the generation coming up after Z. With this sort of lack of respect for things. And you'll hear older people say it all the time, oh, they're so disrespectful, they don't respect anything. And you just kind of blow past it because older generations have a tendency to say that about younger generations. But in this case, it's not even the younger generations, it's the millennials talking about their own children, which would be Z, right? And I say that because he did this scam with his mother. So he's committed a crime. He's doing a scam with no parental intervention. And this sort of what happens when you try to be a friend to your kids rather than being a parent. Okay? What he ends up doing is he's basically broke. Okay? In jail now, but at the time of this story, he was basically broke. And he's sort of playing on the fact that he's a celebrity. Now, why is he doing this? Because people are blind to that. People assume you're mega rich. People assume celebrities have more money than just regular people. For example, a doctor could easily make the same amount of money as a person on a soap opera. Nobody knows that, but it's the truth, right? So he's sort of playing on his celebrity by telling everybody he knew Justin Bieber, who is still somewhat famous, right? He's doing this to get jewelry, to get homes, to get people to give him credit. And the entire time, he and his mother have no intention on paying. They keep getting evicted. They keep running up tabs and bills before they are ultimately caught at the final leg of their scam, having left the last place to a person that they were promised money to, that they had promised money to. It's like a jeweler or something. In the care of him, as if it was his home, him meaning in the care of the jeweler by Sean Kingston and his mother, as if they actually lived there, but they had already had plans to be evicted. So the lady that comes in is the real estate agent. This is how they get caught. The real estate agent finally comes in and she says, "What are you doing there?" And the guy's like, "I don't know, who are you?" This is a guy that's supposed to be house sitting, in quotation marks. And she informs them that she told the Kingstons to be out of that house a week ago. So he is stuck in this situation, and Sean Kingston and his mother have fled. Okay. Not enough to have learned what the trail of crimes that they had been doing, but they actually got caught for continuing to do it. They got caught finally at that. Now, I tell that story, I segue into Katy Perry's story because you're like, well, put this together. Katy Perry, okay, wants to buy a house. She's a celebrity, so therefore she needs to buy a house, and it's going to be this house. Well, this is a house that's an old church or a convent, so to speak, for these nuns. She does not take note to the fact that there's a religious connection to this. She just wants them out, and she wants this property. The archdiocese, with dollar signs in his eyes, because they assume as a celebrity you have money, decides, yes, we're going to sell it. But the nuns are like, wait a minute, we live here. We've been living here. We've owned this property for 20 years. The archdiocese says, no, we own the property. We want to sell it to Katy Perry. Get out, basically. They go into this long struggle, this fight, because the nuns say, listen, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is take you to court and fight for the property. When they get to court, the original judgment, the judge says, well, she has the money to pay for it. Technically, the archdiocese actually does own it, and so you will have to leave unless you find a buyer. The nuns have a friend that has enough money. They get her together. They say, we're going to go ahead and bid on this property. And Katy Perry will not let it go. She does not care that there's nuns. She does not care that they have nowhere to go. She does not care how long they've been there. She has the right to live where she wants to live. Sort of with this desensitized feeling towards a person that practices good faith. She's not religious like that, right? As most people in today's society are not, right? Long story short, in the end, they fight for so long, for so many court dates, and ultimately, the woman that was supposed to buy the property gets sued by Katy Perry. In the end, she bankrupts the lady. And the nuns are still supposed to get out. As all this unfolds and everything happens and Katy Perry wraps it up and she just had to have this property, she just had to kick these nuns are going through heck. They are stressed, they are scared, they are pleading to her for help. They're saying, please let it go. I understand you can live anywhere you want to live, so please pick somewhere else, just not this with all this stuff. The stress of it all, according to the nuns of the woman that was speaking, because one nun was specifically the spokesperson for all of the nuns, right? She dies. And the nuns say, from the stress of what was happening, she was already an older lady. You have to understand, these aren't young nuns. These aren't 20-year-old, novelists, which are, the step to nun. It takes 7 years to become a nun. These are actual nuns. Old, because it takes a long time to become a nun, older women living out the ends of their days. She passes, right? This is a lot of stress on her, according to the other nuns. That still doesn't stop Katy Perry. She continues to go after it. In the end, after all that is said and done, After this woman passes away, after all those court dates, after the one other lady that they picked to help buy the property ends up getting bankrupt from the lawsuit, Katy Perry decides she doesn't want the property. After all. Not in a sense where she's saying all of this is, we're putting everybody through too much and we're all, stressing and it's just too much. Not out of empathy, which is learned behavior. It's not natural. Oh, people go, I have compassion. No, I didn't say compassion. Oh, she's kind. I didn't say kindness. Oh, she cares. She's reciprocal if there's concern. Or I didn't say compassion. I didn't say care. I said empathy, which in whole is what we're all lacking. It is a learned behavior. It means it has to be taught to you. And we're starting to see what happens when you don't have it. Now, how do I bring this downfall of celebrity, these stories, what am I bringing into the entire scope of it? AI, according to the recent comments by Bill Gates, is going to replace people. Now, we're talking about jobs, technically speaking, right? We're talking about, Amazon just laid off 20,000 people. We're talking about all of the stores and places that are closing now. We're talking about our recent president and the tariffs that are on the other countries. We're talking about all of these things in a weird sort of a way sink into the thought process of AI, which is to replace people as if we don't need them. Now here, I'm going to bring it around. Without empathy, are we really human? I mean, are we really functioning well without it as we learn to continue to not teach each generation that it's necessary? It's not so much that the older generations are saying these kids are just disrespectful. They're saying why they're disrespectful. They can't identify with anybody but themselves. And if you have to understand everything only as it applies to you, then you become dead inside, like a robot. Right? That's why it's so easy for AI to replace people. Because we're hardly like people at all, right? We're not interested in celebrities anymore because they don't serve our purpose. They just don't. They did at a time. They made us feel like we could be more than what we are. It helped people that were insecure could latch on and live vicariously through someone they thought was smart and beautiful and had money. It served a purpose for people that wanted to commit crimes because you didn't have to feel bad about the companies you were taking the money from. The real estate agents you were taking the money from. Because in the mind of somebody like that, there's no difference between you and anything else. So I say, as I get on my little soapbox right now, the world is going to empty cold shells because that's what we're presenting to everything. That's what we're becoming. We don't teach empathy anymore. We're too busy trying to be like our kids, right? You have mothers dressing like their daughters because they want to look like them. Not valuing the wisdom that comes with getting older. They don't value that. You want to know why? Because the young people aren't listening. They've got all the answers. It's different than before, right? Because even the millennials are complaining. And the millennials are still young. You guys aren't old yet, right? The Z generation is really the ones millennials are looking at like, guys, what's wrong? What did we do to you guys? Because you guys act like we did something to you all the time. Like you're just committing all these trespasses, all these crimes, all these things. You're just doing all these things to us and we don't know why. We don't understand why you're like this. And you'll hear the X generations, and boomers are just really just shaking their heads. They're just like, we're not even getting in this fight because we don't need to. But you'll hear Xers versus millennials versus Z. You hear a lot of these types of things. And it's because the X generation really had to have empathy because it was in everything. It was in every show. It was in every cartoon. It was all over PBS. It was in all those things that they say, I miss these things I grew up with. It was in everything. So you had no choice but to learn it. But when you start building into technology, you start taking out the personal connections that you had to have in Generation X. You had to have it. There were no computers. So if you wanted to play with your friends, you literally had to go outside and go knock on their door and say, are you free today? If you got rejected, it was in person. Probably in front of the whole school. if you got turned down by a woman, or you're a girl trying to ask it. First of all, if you're a girl trying to ask a guy out, you're really going to get jacked up. But if you were a guy trying to ask a girl out and she needed to reject you, and it probably happened in front of everybody. So you had to develop an understanding that you can't treat people any kind of way. Because guess what? You're going to see them again. Not online, but face to face. You were literally going to have to look at that person every day. When you start bringing technology into everything, which we're continuing to advance, we're not just bringing technology in, we're advancing in technology. You start bringing technology in, you start taking out the personal level, and empathy wasn't really needed, or so people thought. Well, you don't have to have it because you just turn it off, right? I can say anything I want to you over here while I'm sitting at my house talking to you online. You can't do anything because you have to try to get to me first. If you know where I am, I could be in Belize. I could be in, Ireland. I could be in America. I could be anywhere in America, and you won't be able to get to me. So I can say whatever I want. Thus, the term. This is why AI continues to advance, because there's no need to put people in those jobs. When you don't have empathy, you don't understand that behind that person are 4 kids, a wife, and a mortgage. You don't see that. You just hire younger people because they don't care about anything. So you start hiring people that don't care. You need those people because they help get your business done. And you kind of see it. It wasn't always this way with President Trump, but you kind of see it in him a little bit too. Like he got jaded somewhere down the road and people just didn't matter anymore. The insensitivity of him not respecting the Pope, the digital photo, for those of you that don't know, there was an AI photo of President Trump after the death of the Pope, not very long after, of him, dressed as the Pope. Which he's not a religious person, so to him that's not even, doesn't mean anything. It's like, I get it. Like he's just like, oh, it's just an outfit. It's me being, sort of mocking and sarcastic. Perhaps could be his thinking, right? But in real life, he was an actual person, and people actually knew him, spent time with him, and he changed a lot of things as a person for the Catholic Church as a business. Okay, for those of you that are insensitive and don't care about people, you're like, how does this apply? It applies because, remember, the Vatican is a place of business. It is also a church, but it is a place of business. And when he had empathy, it shaped this Pope's decisions, you see. It's why they got rid of the first one. Remember, there was between John, who we all loved, oh, Pope John Paul, oh, we love it. And some of you were like, who? He was the one before the one in between Francis, right? There was Pope John. There was one person in between whose name no one could probably remember. And then there was Francis. And the reason why he came to be is because the other one didn't have empathy. Now, this is fine if it's on your side. If you don't believe, I'm going to pick something harsh, but if you think transgender should be burning in hell, and someone says a transgender should be burning in hell, then you don't have a problem with that. He was perfect for those. But he wasn't perfect for people that were like, hey, I am one. I'm not personally not born female, but I'm saying for those people that were. Or if you have a very strict belief of not having sex before marriage, which many Catholics do, it kind of contrasts with, you're burning in hell for that. But what about the people that already did it? So he basically doomed you to hell, right? You're going to hell no matter what you do after now. So it was that thinking, well, what is it like to be in that situation without being in it? That's what empathy is. Empathy isn't, I feel for you. I have compassion for you. Oh, my heart goes out to you. Compassion comes as a result of you knowing how it feels because you went through it. It's rather selfish thought if you think about it, but it is an identity. You have identity to what's happening, right? If I am a transgender, I can definitely identify because I'm going through it every day. But if I'm born a woman like I am and I don't have doubts about being a woman, and I can't identify unless I have empathy. I can't do it. It's an impossibility. I'm going to be looking at you like, oh, you are all messed up. Like, what is wrong with you? What? Get it straight, But in order to make decisions for everybody, you have to have that thought process of, okay, now I know I'm not like this, and maybe I don't even agree with it. Empathy isn't agreeing. Some people go, I agree with that. I have empathy towards it. No, that's not empathy. You're just agreeing with them. So that's less empathy in and of itself. The definition of empathy means that you have not been in that situation. You are not one of the people being involved in that, but yet you can still identify with what they're going through. Applying basic loving principles. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's why I haven't said anything. Because everyone's like, why aren't you putting out videos? I'm putting out videos because my thoughts about it is pretty much the same. Here's another example of no empathy. I mean, it's just like, how much do we have to lose before we realize it's actually needed to keep the human race going? How much it's more of a pessimistic attitude towards more examples of the same thing and nobody catching on. That's how I feel about it. So I don't really do a story if I have a bias towards it. And lately, I've had bias towards some things. So I won't report it. I won't do it. I'm not one of those people that'll just, I'll just say my opinion as if it's a fact. It isn't. It's an opinion. And in my opinion, part of the struggles that we're having now is because we can't identify with each other. And we're not taught to do that. Empathy, I have learned. I had to learn it. And I had to apply it, not just to other people, but to myself sometimes, in order to get a perspective that's open enough to be fair. You see? All right, I'm getting off the box. I will put out some videos on stories and cases and financial literacy, and all of these things will come back. They'll come back probably mostly financial literacy because it's a neutral story. But I just don't want to put out, news stuff if I have a bias towards it. I just don't. I like to be open, and I like to be in the middle, and I like to be, of that perspective where I'm applying empathy to everything. And I just lately haven't been feeling like that. I'm a human being, so I do have feelings about things that are not regulated at times. And so until I could get a hold of that, I didn't put any videos out. So all right, thank you so much. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my TikTok. It's very different. Oh, just to answer a question, people are like, what a contrast, right? I went to your YouTube channel and you sound way professional, way more, and then you doing TikToks and you're blowing kisses. Like, I don't know. So let's just say I'm not one person, right? I'm not one thing, right? I have different sides of me just like everybody else. So I like to play around with TikTok and show other things. And then this is just a news channel. It's information and news. So you presented in that way. I am not one thing, so they're all me. Probably elevated. Let's just say they're highlighted on an extra when you add, sound and music and a camera and some lights. It's a little bit amplified. I probably wouldn't be that highlighted normally. But it's highlighted on these channels, so you get to see it in a magnifying glass, for lack of a better description. Otherwise, I'm pretty quiet actually as a person. I do like to do a lot of things, but I'm not really as exaggerated. I know what sometimes if people are around me, they are like, "Wow, something wrong? You're not talking," because mostly I'm quiet. I'm really more quiet than it would come across, but a little bit more conservative even than it would have come across. But it's all me. It's just amplified is what it is. It's highlighted. So when you're talking to me normally, I'm not in a magnifying glass, so it just comes across regular. All right. Just to answer your question. Again, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my TikTok. Thank you for sticking with me. I'll put out more videos when I can. And I'll see you guys next time.